Any.
That's what I'm waiting for, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just.
It will convene that.
Although I did have some else, I think it's. Yeah.
That's kind of spooky.
Well, I did say there a couple days ago, checking was sick leave.
All right, there should be all set.
Well, we never come back.
Today is Tuesday, August 20th, 2024. The time is 6:01 p.m. I'd like to call the regular village board meeting to order. Myself, Mike Cappers, present.
Caleb Garn, Chris Marino here.
Frank Crum. And Donnie Kern is joining us by Zoom. And then Ryan.
I'm here.
He said Ryan isn't.
Hi.
Yeah.
I don't believe so.
Like to stand for the pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Approval of agenda.
Public comment first.
Oh, and this public comment. Thank you. Bob?
I have some pictures on.
Bob, if you could, name and address.
Oh, Robert Treelock, 201 Arnold Street, Somerset.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, I'm here to show you these pictures and hopefully the village will consider help financing. And the mural on the Arc buildings. Those are pictures that Amory's redoing old ones and the village is paying for them, the town. And these are one that St. Croix Falls just did. Who the village is also paid for. And also, a year ago, Ellsworth did two, one that, the cheese factory paid for one, the village paid for the other one. And, that was in Ellsworth, and in Frederick, there was two up there 2 years ago they did. And the village paid for one and the library paid for the other. So finding this out, that the villages have helped pay for these murals, would be nice if we could have that mural down there, because the grant they never got the grant, so without any finance, there won't be no mural. And I talked to, Lonnie, who's McGuire, or whatever her name is, yeah. About 2.5 weeks ago in person, and I asked him, well, cause the, Council of Champions was pretty much a dead issue since they didn't get the loan. And there's discrepancy in what their voting was on the 4 presenter of murals and then what the town businesses wanted. So it was a dead issue at that point. But Lonnie said, I said, Lonnie, if we can get finance, you still have the mural there. And he said, yes. So I'm hoping that the village would consider either paying for the whole price of the mural. If not that, pay for half of it would be $5,500. And I would try to find ways to pay for the other $5,500. And since they paid $4,500 for the buckthorn for the goats to eat up there?
Yeah, it was probably.
Yeah, and then another $1,000 for the buckthorn for the goats, the village work. That's $5,500 right there. And isn't a mural good for the town? And just as important to have that for, showing the spirit of the town and businesses than it is for the buckthorn to be taken out of the parks, which, help the people that play, like the Frisbee golf and the people that go to the park. But other than that, who gets the benefit of that? This mural would benefit the whole town. Be a thing of pride to show the town. Oh, and here's the proposed one that won the most votes from I took a survey of the businesses downtown. Because Lonnie was gonna ask the business people what they thought of these 4 different mural designs that were picked. And anyway, this one that's passed around got the most votes. He got Bernbro got 55% of the votes, and Scotty Roberts got 45% of the votes, and the other 2 that submitted designs, nobody liked them. So I'm hoping the village would consider help finance this to get it done. I mean, if you can pay $550 or $5,050, $5,500 for Ghosty Buckthorn. Why can't you pay at least that much to get a mural started? And I would do what I could to solicit money to entities to pay for the rest.
I think everybody knows, but when he's talking about Lonnie McWhorter, it's the 242 Main Street building. Just on the other side of, between My Happy Place and Rendezvous, and it's all painted black, ready to go.
What does that say?
And I spent a whole day going to, on the businesses on Main Street. And they were happy that someone asked them what their opinion was, what they wanted, because they were never asked.
Oh, Croy.
And I was thanked many times and a lot of different comments and views on the different murals, and they've got to be great.
Do you recall how big that is or how?
Well,
Yeah, it's
it's like
20,
picture down.
like 60,
20 by 60?
I think, yeah, something like that. Since we're the last town that doesn't have anything like that, and Richmond just got a new one last year.
Sure.
Avery's getting two this year, they're redoing.
It's the same
Um,
falls.
St. Croix Falls, you see, just got a new one, and the village paid for that. Why can't we at least pay for half of one? You know, get this done.
So, and when you say, half, Bob, it's the total 10,000, 11,000?
Yes, the total is 11,000.
11,000.
Yes.
If, I think I could come up with a way to pay half, not through the village. I think I
Yeah,
have
that-
something, but, if you could get a letter from Lonnie giving permission, and then also get a letter from Rendezvous, because they'd have to be on their lot and their
Right.
property to put it on. I think we could figure something out for you.
okay, and I would do that. And if they pay at least half, I'll figure out a way to pay the other half, whether it's through businesses or GoFundMe or a benefit or whatever.
I don't think we need all these pictures.
And Champions is okay with that moving forward like that, as far as you know?
It would have to go to the group. I'm fine with it.
Right, yeah, let's see if you can get those letters of,
Okay, one from Lonnie, that he's okay with it, one from, because I've been talking to Pat all along, and like I said, I talked to Lonnie in person 2 weeks ago. And he said it would still be a goal if we get the money to do it.
yeah, so, and not like, shouldn't be this free for all right now, but, Somerset United still has money. We can do the street banners at some point, once we can all pick it, but there'll be some money left over. And I think the board would probably go for a mural like that. I
Yeah,
can kind of, that everybody can see, it's
yeah, it'd
benefits downtown,
be great for the town.
yeah,
That's,
perfect,
that's all I got.
thanks, Bob. Anybody else for public comment? Any updates on the enrichment deal over there that you guys have been working on?
No.
No. Approval of agenda,
Brandon Craig, Crowell make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
first and second for the discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Approval of the consent agenda, anybody want anything pulled out?
Yeah, we're gonna make a motion to approve the consent agenda as written.
Brandon Crowell second.
First and second, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. New business, discussion, possible approval, participation in St. Croix County, St. Croix EDC housing study. Bob, can you speak to that?
Yeah, St. Croix County is planning on doing a housing study, something that goes on the list of things to consider for the village to do, to see what our inventory was. See what needs, we were lacking, where we're maybe over, inventory on some style of homes. So housing studies go from 30 to 40,000 bucks, so, St. Croix County welcoming us to be a part of this for $2,000. I think is great. And it's definitely gonna show us where our housing styles and our just where we can improve our housing
Or strengths and-
variations. Yep.
help with zoning and stuff like that, support any type of zoning changes we'd have to do, or?
It'll look at our rental and it'll look at, it does show what, you know, kind of the outline of the scope of work is on that. So there's about 6 things that it addresses. But
It's the St. Croix County EDC that's actually gonna do it. And
that's for 2,000?
$2,000. Do we get to see the other towns' data, or do we get ours? or-
I would,
It'll be a whole county report.
Okay.
EDC is going around to all the municipalities asking for $2,000.
Thanks.
And I'd like to make a motion to approve the $2,000 to participate in the St. Croix County EDC housing study.
Brandon from second.
First and second, any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Discussion possible approval. Update ordinance 10-1-28 to add parent B. Sub 10, no person shall stop, park, or allow any vehicle to stand at any time on the west side of Depot Street.
Okay, I can take this one. So the curb on the west side of Depot Street has been painted yellow for quite some time. That's difficult to see in the winter, so it's not clear. And so we need to update the ordinance to match the reality of what we have going on so that it is enforceable.
And I assumed that when that got done and this curbs got painted, that the ordinance got updated, but it didn't.
No,
No.
Okay.
not at the time.
And then, so along with the painting, it's been freshly painted again. I think it was 4 years ago or so that they did one side of the street, but in the winter you can't tell.
so put some signs.
Signs up. That was my question.
Pardon my ignorance, but why is this an issue?
Cause, yeah, you can't enforce it. I mean, they can come down here, and go to.
Why is it an issue to park on the west side of Depot Street?
You ever drove through there?
Yeah.
On a Friday?
Well,
It's pretty busy, and there's a lot of cars and people walking there.
I don't think there would be space for parking on both sides.
and maybe we could check that out because when we made it one side, that's when that road was a truck route. It's no longer a truck route since this came in. Should we check to see if it's wide enough to park on both sides before we
The center line over.
Right.
Well, if you do
Center,
parking on both
central.
sides, it's tight.
It is tight.
If you get a, you know, if you get a truck, you know, a delivery truck or anything, you're stopping.
And a lot of trucks are still using that route.
I think the
too,
biggest
right?
thing is the safety part of it, people walking,
Yeah.
like they're walking across the street, you know. And that would be my biggest concern, because it gets pretty, there's a lot of thing going on there sometimes on a Friday, Saturday,
And we're not really changing anything. We're just
No.
making it
just making it so.
so people in the winter, when the curb, you can't see the curbs because of snow or whatever, and putting up signs. And
It was an issue, for snow removal when they were parked on both sides. Yeah, you got 11-foot plow going down. And it was a problem. I was in the plow truck.
So your recommendation is to update the ordinance and put up signage.
And then maybe we can look at when we redo that road, which is in our 5-year plan, that we can address and get additional, room in there.
That wouldn't be smart.
And all the residents know they're not parking on that side. It's just the people that come to Oliphant when it's busy.
I think there was a couple of people that they seem to really dislike when people do park on that side.
Other houses.
Yes, buckwheat, yeah.
I would love to add additional parking in the future, but I don't see it happening now. It is really tight when I turn, when there's even one car.
Cause they'll be all the way up around almost to the corner there
And
sometimes.
it's, correct me if I'm wrong, Bob, but didn't Oliphant have some kind of additional parking across the road over by Treadmill for a little bit or something?
I don't think so. I think maybe they just parked there and
And but they have some kind of a plan for extra parking.
I heard of any plan for anything additional. But
When?
Somebody wanna make a motion to update the ordinance and add signage?
I'll make a motion. to update the ordinance 110 to add parent B, parent 10. No person shall stop, park, or allow any vehicle to stand at any time on the west side of Depot Street.
Chris Moreno, second.
Okay, can you add to your motion to add signage?
Are you gonna stop and catch the
Certainly.
no person?
Well, the village board recommends adding signage
Good.
at the direction of Public Works Director.
Does that work?
Second.
I'll second.
Second, amendment. Okay, first and a second, any further discussion?
My only discussion is. Oh, go ahead, Don.
Is it, I just want to clarify that the motion does include signage to be added.
At Bob's discretion.
Bob, are we gonna put signage there?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay,
My only comment was, it's just part of, we're gonna be putting through a lot of ordinance changes as well, on Public Works. Are we gonna work through a whole pile of these as we put them through, or how do you wanna?
That would be my preference to do
Okay.
them.
We have a lot.
Okay,
Yeah, and then with our Municode, where they're housed, then we're now on a biannual schedule. So they'll update them all, so they'll reflect on our website right away. And there'll be a separate tab on there where they can see ones that are kind of like, they've been approved, but they're not quite codified yet.
got
Cause
it.
that will only happen twice a year, that they're codified.
Okay.
But yes, I would prefer a batch.
All right, that was my only.
if this is then following up on that, if this is approved, is that something that, can be set aside so that they can all be adopted, at the same time, or by making this, change, is that going to be done now and then we'll have to wait for the ones coming out of Public Works?
This one can be done now.
This one's saying no person, does that include walkers?
You can't park
You
your
just
car
can't
there.
park your car. No person
Okay.
can park your car. Or walker.
Yeah, just so you know.
And then, just a side thing, we trim those curbs back to see more of that yellow, just for
Mhm.
the wee bit. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, anybody? Look, it sounded like everybody. Discussion possible approval, water system evaluation. Chuck?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Good evening, board. So the, just to back up, the water system evaluation came about because there was a question of whether or not it's worthwhile to paint the water tower that sits next to well 3, so water tower number 1. And this evaluation basically made 3 recommendations. Is that you should keep the water tower, and there's value there, and it's worthwhile, repainting it and doing minor safety improvements at an estimated cost of $650,000. Wasn't too many years ago you could build a darn thing for that, but now that's what it takes to paint them. And that's slated for, I believe, 2026 kind of timeframe, that improvement. Phase 2 of the study recommends is that you develop a high pressure zone. That would include a booster station as well as a pressure reducing valve. And that's essentially to serve the area south of the railroad tracks. So the meadows, the school, Winesap, et cetera. And the booster station in today's dollars is roughly about $1.5 million. And the PRV valve is another $500,000. And right now, per the kind of the state regulations, pressure should be between 35 PSI and 100 PSI. And your current system is, around 39 at the low end and 98 at the high. So you're within range, but as development increases, sooner or later, you're just gonna have to address that. And, until you have 10 houses with lower than 35 PSI pressure, there's no funding assistance for you. But it looks like, you know, you're gonna, regardless of whether there's funding or not, that within the next 5-10 years, you're gonna need to address that. An improvement to address that kind of low pressure, those folks on the lower side there. And again, that's by the school. Sure.
Is there, would that be money coming out of impact fees at all, or from the, water utility bills, or what's the
Yes and yes.
public works water called? PAWC, PSC?
Yeah, so it would be coming out of the, enterprise funds, a portion of it would be paid for through the, collected impact fees, that sort of thing. So the study, and we can get into some of those details later, but, the study suggests that, a portion of that be borne by the future residents, and then, it's a combination, existing residents and future residents to cover those costs.
And Chuck, will that affect any of the new development up in Pineville, up the hill, and then if we go farther to the north, or is that gonna be something completely separate for the pressure up there?
The pressures up there is, it's, you get to that high point at the north end of Pineville, but it's still within range, and, we don't need to anticipate. The high pressure zone is just the recommendation for the, for the south end there.
The one south.
Yeah, and then eventually, depending on where your growth occurs, some of those things. So it's a couple years from now, you're doing the rehab of the tower, 5 to 10, you're doing the high pressure zone. And then 10 to 15, you'd be looking at a brand new tower, which would be another 200,000 gallons. Which is the kind of the size that you currently have, your two towers are 200,000 feet.
And that would be on the south side of
Well,
town somewhere?
No, it all is kind of dependent on where you grow, some of those things, so.
But that would be at a price tag of upwards of over 3.5 mil.
Yeah, it would be 3.5 million to build a tower
Today.
today,
Over,
yeah.
over that, because you're talking 10 years down the road.
Yeah, when I first got in this business in the early 90s, the rule of thumb was $1 a gallon to build a water tower, and now you're spending 3.5 million to put 200,000 in the air, so. Things change, I got old. So. But that's kind of 15 years down the road, and where that's cited, it's really kind of a function of how and where you grow.
Are you looking for any kind of recommendation, or this is just?
Well, we're
the board?
I guess you can certainly, recommend its approval, and it'd be incorporated into the need study, the information from it, so. I don't know if an official motion, but I just wanted to get out there, and if there was address any questions or concerns.
Yeah, it was very useful for us, because I know for myself, I was thinking we were just gonna end up going with a new water tower, but based on the numbers here, it makes sense to just paint it. And then make sure we, concentrate on that high pressure zone. That was something that was an issue I didn't know that we really had. So I think that brought to light some of that other issues, and I don't think it makes sense to get a new water tower. based on this.
Yeah, and building a bigger one now doesn't make sense. Just because, then you're dealing with stagnant water, and can't really, physics come involved, you can't just keep it half full, because then, pressure, has to kind of match the high levels and the low levels of the existing towers, and those things, so.
So Chuck, this would be the painting of just the outside of the water tower?
No, inside, outside, and then some minor safety improvements, so it's a complete kind of blast it all down to metal.
Is it
repaint it.
completely steel inside, or is it stainless steel
It's
inside?
steel, it's
Steel.
inside and out.
Inside and out is steel. And then would that include like, the logo, Somerset logo on the outside for the
Yes, yes.
painting?
The engineers don't pick out logos or colors, that's your responsibility as a board, so.
That's where the debate comes in.
Yeah, exactly. I can tell you need to
But-
paint it. Paul and
But
I
that
are,
price, that price tag right now though of 650 is today's dollars, right? Not 2 years from today?
That's correct.
We have a water tower builder here in town. Would look to Michael Webb.
So we collaborated with him on that. When you replaced the gas line tank on the tower.
That one.
Yeah,
I think receiving the report is a good thing and making sure we reference to it when we have our deliberations in regards to the water tower.
I guess I'll make a motion to approve or receive the water system evaluation.
Second,
First and second, any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Discussion, possible approval, comprehensive outdoor recreational plan.
so yes, this was presented to the Public Works Committee at their last meeting. They're recommending approval. And I'm looking for a motion to that effect, and I can certainly go into more detail.
You give us a brief synopsis of it, Chuck?
Yeah, so in order to say remain funding eligible, you need to update your quote, your comprehensive outdoor recreation plan every 5 years. And it's been 5 years since your last update, so that's the reason I'm doing this. And so, you know, we went through and, you know, it looks at, evaluates all your parks as well as your sidewalk and trail system, and there's maps included, you know, to help. Shows, you know, where that existing system is and where the future improvements are recommended. We also evaluated each park, the area of highest priority, and what the focus of the Public Works Committee is going to be is the village parks. And you know, they're gonna be reevaluating the master plan that was put out there, that was completed back in 2018. And just go through and see what revisions and, you know, if it's still relevant today or if there's tweaks that need to be made. And also, I think there was some desire of the committee to also potentially look at updating the numbers at some point. Because it is 5 years.
Yeah, and I think so we really would want to do the 2018 plan. The biggest hurdle in that plan right now is figuring out what we're gonna do with how we're gonna shove people around for who uses those ball fields. So right now they're utilized for all kinds of activities, and ball time or field time's already a little bit low, so that's really the biggest hurdle that there is outside of funding and that it's just that we have to move those fields. But that was identified, as Chuck pointed to, that was identified as our #1 area of need. It's a beautiful area that is completely underdeveloped, and the Public Works team, speak for the entire Public Works Committee and just say that we would really like to see that area get fixed up, along with other parks as well. But this was, we really agreed with this report. We agreed with the assessment of the need.
Which is,
You know, the other thing that was a little bit new from the last one is, you know, I talked about the committee and what recommended in here is you consider, you know, some land closer to the water for dog park in Kid 5.
Yep, we had come, so yeah, we agreed on, we had, got the fencing acquired, we agreed on what we were gonna acquire for fencing, and then storing it, and then getting a plan for having the dog park out at Tip 5, once we get finalized plans of what the water's gonna look like down there, what the watershed area will look like.
You know, and the last page of the core basically identifies the, you know, the sidewalks and where the parks are too, so that's helpful. People would be figure out where, you know, some of you folks or some folks in the audience may not know some of the names of the various parks throughout the community.
Bob, for Pine Sap, will there be a trail system that'll kind of go all the way back around to that Spartan Boulevard? So people can make a big loop from like Bruce Larson Way through.
Yeah, there's trail connections that come from the development into the school property that the school then can choose to tie into.
Okay.
So if you look, you can see it on the screen there.
The red one.
So Bruce Larson Way is that blue line at the bottom there. And then the future is the dash.
Future roads
Sidewalk.
or future sales, can't tell,
Trail / sidewalk. So,
and then it'll go, okay, up to Somerset Lane. Or
it'll tie in right,
Spartan Drive.
right there.
And then it looks like a connection to that little vacant lot that's been sitting there, it'll go through that too to.
Yep.
Yeah, please.
And there was one down here, the school. They weren't in favor of that, just because it's leading it into the back of the school property and it's an opportunity for some mischievous behavior.
There's nothing we really need to approve then for the comp plan at this time?
Oh, I think you should.
We need to adopt it so I can continue to get funding.
You need to do it by via resolution.
If there is a resolution on this, Paul.
Would be nice, I think, especially if you get big funding.
And it was like,
For that, you're gonna want it on record that you have one.
we can do it next week.
So we'll bring forward a resolution next month. That's fine.
So we'll. Just receive this then, and that'll be a separate item.
Yeah, we'll get on the next month agenda.
Okay.
For the resolution.
Brandon Crone make a motion to, receive the comprehensive outdoor recreational plan.
Second.
First and a second, further discussion, all in favor, opposed, same sign. Discussion, possible approval, curb replacement, Live Nation. Can you speak to this?
Yeah, so. Chuck wants to show.
You want me to share my screen? You want me to?
Before Chuck does that, or when he's doing that, EJ had called me and said they wanted to do some modification work to the entrance of the amphitheater access off of Plur Drive. And our conversation was really brief. The biggest thing is it was absent removing curb, so I wasn't aware, until I got a message from a resident that, hey, they removed the curb. And I went up there. I had to come back here and go on the aerial because I'm like, I don't remember curb being here. Which of course there is. So I guess this should have just, if I would have known there was curb, I would have said, well, let's bring it to the private channels and bring it through Public Works, bring it to the village board for their consensus on this. Which it kind of got lost in the translation of things. If it were to go through the, let's say I did know it was curb and I put it on Public Works, put it on the village board. I wouldn't object to the curb being removed, based off of the impact it would have is solely to their property. And the gradient down there is about 4%, so there's not a lot of water going in there. And this was originally done back in 2000, 2001, maybe even before then, 2001.
2001.
And jurisdictionally, the state had Main Street as jurisdiction, so they got to call the shots on access. The individual that was gonna develop this was proposing a water park type hotel. And from that, they enforced a pretty enhanced commercial access point, which was why that access area is so wide, to allow turn lanes and this and that. Well, since that's gone away, the need for that access, it's good because we have concert cars going in there, so it does benefit. The attempt was with public safety was to open up that access to get cars off of Main Street to alleviate any backing. So I guess in summary, if this would have gone through the proper procedure, And I think Chuck agrees, I don't know that we would object to it. And I think speaking with EJ today, it's just, you know, we need to make sure I know what's all involved and that we, you know, go through the procedure correctly, so we don't get to this point. And there's just a lot of frustration with the whole.
Chuck, can you click on that, Porter Drive and identify, because when I pull it up on the GIS map, not that one, the one to the left there. So where the curb, where the majority of the curb got taken out, the amphitheater owns the majority of that, actually. I guess a smaller portion than I thought from my map, but. So they own that road, it's a privately owned road.
Isn't that how houses get access?
Yeah. But it's not owned by the village, it's owned by the amphitheater. And they just,
The easement?
Yeah, that access.
yeah. So, I don't see. And to be honest, when we had this meeting with the sheriff's department and township, everybody, and the problem was, how do you get people in and out safely, quickly? How do you get people to their VIP and the AODA area? So I actually came up with the idea. And I didn't know about I was hoping the curb would go through the proper channels. I know when EJ talked to Bob, that the curb part didn't sound like it came up, but it sounds like most of it was on their property anyways. To me, it's kind of a dead issue, and they've had really good luck with the traffic getting in and out the last few shows since they've done it.
Was this initially, because this was initially brought up at the joint meeting, and I think someone had said they were concerned of how the storm had affected it, right? I think that comment had been brought up, but we're not really worried. Not too worried about that based on what you guys are saying.
Right.
I stopped up there, I took some pictures, sent it to Bob. Everything towards the south side of the road there is going to go towards where the big billboards are. Anything that kind of hits in the middle of the road was also just gonna go down into their property anyways. So it's the only people that it would affect is their property. They smoothed it off to be able to make the cars and trucks go down there without bottoming it out and getting them into that big staging area, so then they can get them off the road and get them to park where they need to park.
What was the biggest gripe about taking it out?
Sorry, the biggest what?
Because it was a public improvement that was accepted by the village. That was the biggest thing, so.
Okay.
you know,
But
that shouldn't-
basically, companies shouldn't be, companies or people shouldn't be taking something out without it at least being permitted. I mean, that is, it might be considered village, or private road, but it actually was turned over to the village, and, the original documents, when they created that B1 intersection, have very specific language into it, because I signed that language when I lived down that road. It said that there would be no, anything like that, no, instructions or anything on that easement getting back to those properties from that, south side of that, piece of parcel of land.
I guess we haven't seen that language that
It was signed back in 2000, I think, 4. When Public Works looked at this and went through it all, they agreed that, basically recommended that an agreement between public safety, Public Works, would, and the owners, would be presented to the board for consideration. Has something like that happened since Public Works and, Public Safety got a chance to review anything on that, or?
Bob, correct me if I'm wrong, but did you have Andrea look into it? She couldn't find anything where it got turned over to the village?
No, There was no action taken. That was back in 2015. We found the minutes and there was no action. And it did not come up again at a subsequent meeting, so it was dead at that time. But the request was to rescind that, basically from the blacktop. When the blacktop stops going south, was to revert that back to the property owner. The reason that thing extends so far was, again, because that was the proposed development showed
Gonna be a hotel and.
on a plat that was gonna be a public, dedicated to public area.
That never happened.
And it never.
That was Mike Johnson, that owned SMCA. Right?
Correct.
So would you say then that the plan to do nothing would be an acceptable plan, to just leave it as it is?
I think it's, you know,
That would be acceptable.
if that's gonna get improved, that curb probably is gonna get pulled out of there anyways. Just because the topography, it's a slope. So if there was an access point down there. And if it's needed and Live Nation still owns, the amphitheater owns it, well, it's theirs to put it back.
Pay for it, it's their land.
And I would, one thing, I don't feel that EJ left out removing the curb on purpose. I think, you know, as we all know, EJ is going through some health things and I don't think he blatantly just tried to skew information to.
Yeah, no, and I don't think that's a malicious intent. I
Yeah.
just think that it was a miscommunication,
Correct.
but it sounds like we would have approved it either way. So yeah, just like you said, Bob, as long as and everyone, we're going through the proper channels and we're giving it the communicating, we should be fine.
Does Live Nation own the property or did?
No, I missed the amphitheater.
And from what I've heard from Live Nation, EJ and other people and concert goers, traffic was a little bit backed up that first one. And then they implemented this staging area and everything. And so the first one was 7,000 people, second one was 7,000, then the last one was 10,000. The second 7,000 was no traffic issues going in or out, and the one with 10,000 at the last one had no problems. They got in and out in like 20 minutes. So I think it's working. But we'll see with Willie Nelson.
I think
Do you have
that's-
anything to add there, Donnie?
I guess at this point in time, if, the rest of the board, everybody, feels that it's, you know, acceptable and, that's gonna be the entrance and, you know, for the concert grounds, as long as it doesn't impede the egress and egress of the, individuals that are on that driveway. And if they have any complaints, then I'm sure that we'd have to revisit it, but, if you guys are all are okay with it as it is, I'm concerned about erosion. But you won't know anything on that until you get some significant rains.
And that would be on their property anyway, right? You said the water's shedding right down theirs, so.
The water will shed there, but it'll erode that driveway, but I guess that's between them and the property owners.
And it's self-inflicted.
Yeah,
That's it.
yeah, they are the property owners, so they'll have to fix it.
Right, that's what I'm saying, is I don't know what agreements they have on that road, you know, if that all changed or not. Since I left there, I'm just saying that if that driveway would erode, that's between the property owners and the people that access their roads on that easement.
So I guess we're not looking for a curb replacement, is that correct? So this motion just dies, or does anybody want to make a motion for something?
I think we would have to, I'll make a motion to approve the plan to do nothing,
And they take no action?
take no action, yep.
Motion to take no action, is there a second?
I'll second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Discussion possible approval, use of public spaces.
Yes, I put that on, it was discussed about using, public spaces at Public Works. You know, there was, in your packet, I think there was some, documents that were presented. And there is also a ordinance that's on the books that needs to be revisited, but as of right now, we have individuals that put up tents and on the village parks, and other individuals coming in and utilizing the corner lot. We had originally talked way back and as a board about dealing with that lot as a possible renting out lots or sections of that, and now it's just kind of been anybody coming in and utilizing it if they get a permit to sell, a vendor's permit from the village. So I don't know what the pleasure is of this board, if they want to continue on with that, but I think at least looking at the ordinances that are placed, I believe it's 12-1. And we have a firm recommendation from the Public Works, but that ordinance allows for permits to be submitted to the chairman of the board. And then the chairman of the board, the town board to act on, or the village board to act on that. And that hasn't been occurring.
Yeah, and then also just from a practical standpoint of who we're supposed to get a hold of, and right now Neil's kind of in charge of scheduling everything, and there's not really a good mechanism for payment or who they have to go to. So yeah, we don't really have a good system set up right now.
What do you think a good way to be able to set up a good system would be? Because we've been talking about this for a while, and I don't think we're really any closer.
Well, I feel like if people come in and talk to Tasia, I feel like she should be able to make that
I think
call.
we need to,
I mean, maybe some guidelines, but I feel like if she didn't know that.
well, I think we need to have a plan set up for her, and then she'll execute it, and then clear direction on what happens when it goes sideways or.
I agree.
Absolutely.
Set up some guidelines and
Absolutely.
direction, and then, if you can email the board out saying these people are approved for such and such time period to whatever, here's their information.
That would be all right with you.
Well, then they could put it in the calendar, in the village calendar, because right now that those events are being populated, and I think part of what kind of sparked this and then why Donnie put this on there was because the National Night Out event had to be moved the last second up to Veterans Park, it was great up there it was awesome. But they, that private softball company who came in and they worked with us very well on nights that were open for the local teams and stuff, but this was set up as a night for one of their practices, and I think the confusion just for the staff, not only for the staff down here in the village, but also the public works people just need to have a defined process. I have went back and looked at this, at the 12-1-5. I do have a working draft on that, so I can have something as far as 12-1-5 revised. But as far as cost structure and things of that, I don't know, I really don't want to touch costs.
That's something you're willing to do with guidelines.
Yeah, and if I may now make a plug as you guys go into budget time, and we've talked about with our new website and some of those extra features that we chose to table at the time. One of those is a reservation system as part of that package. So it could streamline that process of people making the reservation. We would gather all their information at that point. They could pay for their reservation that way. So I do think the way that it's right now is very archaic.
Yep.
So if a process was put in place, whether it was through that automated type system, if that can come around at budget time, great. Otherwise, I would want to explore some different ways to even try to streamline a little more, because it is quite clunky at this point.
I like that out of it, yeah.
I think the issue is twofold. You have one with the parks and utilizing the parks, and others utilizing, public areas, public spaces. We have a lot that's sitting,
And that was something we had talked about as like a vendor deal that we would possibly do. And you could probably address that issue through the vendor permits, is that if you want, like we had talked about and kind of grazed this a little bit, is that you would have, if somebody came down to get a vendor permit and wanted to sell and utilize that lot, they would have to pay for that day or that week or whatever, and that could be covered under a policy. And then also we're looking at a policy for you reserving the, stands in the parks and such. Now, if we want to have Tasia do all of that, that's fine too. Neil has been handling it, and I think that's a really good thing to have, to possibly look at as a means for us, because I think you're going to see a lot more use of the ball fields this next year if we put a policy in place, kind of like Hudson has, the Public Works is already looking at, to address the issue of individuals from outside the area, like ISG and other possible people that want to utilize the fields, and how they reserve them, and what the cost is for reserving them. And so if this board is willing to maybe kick the vendor cost and fee structure to finance, and have finance come up with something on utilizing the Public Works, because there's nothing to say that somebody can't come in and buy a vendor or pay for a vendor permit and go right across the street in the parking lot and start selling something. That they can do that now. And I think pardon?
I don't think they're supposed to, but they do. But yeah, we can dial that in.
But they can go right across the road, right across Spring Street in that parking lot across from Village Hall and sell something if they wanted to.
So do we shoot for looking at automating this and getting this into the budget and then getting this ready for next year? Because I mean, I don't know how much the parks are really gonna be used towards the end of the year. We could make it work till the end of the year and then work that into see how much that costs to turn that plug-in on. Because I think that makes it a lot easier. And then once, like you said, we have that automated system set up, we can marry that to our ordinances.
And I could also find out if some of that, like the lot use, direct sellers type stuff could be wrapped into that, or if it would kind of strictly be for parks, I'm not sure, but it could possibly be for renting any village space.
Well, if you're saying direct sellers cannot use sell on village property, then we need to enforce that. But I don't think there's any ordinance that I can see that says such a thing. Is that they're saying if they're going to be doing any selling in the village, they need to have a direct seller's permit. It doesn't say they where they can sell or how they can sell or anything like that. And that's what I'm saying, is that the village has a lot of lots here in town, and there's nothing to say they can't go down to Village Park and sell. That, and that's kind of what happened, is that they came down, they booked the lot, and they set up a tent, and I think that's all fine, well and dandy. But then I started looking at the ordinance, and it isn't what we're actually doing. So I think we need to revisit that whole thing. I agree. But I think if you're saying that if it's the stance of the village that we should not be selling with a direct seller's permit on village property unless you have a lease or approved permission to do so, and if that's through a direct seller's permit to give you the right to sell on village property, then that's what it is. Otherwise, we need to look at that and say, no, that's not what we do until we get something in place to allow for that. Paul, what do they do in other areas?
They don't people just don't show up in a park and start selling. Or in the parking lot.
Permission.
Yeah.
Free market or
They do here.
Yeah, so that's unusual, and that needs to be addressed.
So we do have people filling out the permits, though. I don't want there to be confusion. They are filling out the direct seller's permit and getting that approved. Where the breakdown is right now is that there's not a process in place for renting out the space if we're charging for a village lot. There's not ever been anything clear directive to staff. So we've been doing it as it's been past practice where they fill out their direct seller's permit. On there, it says, where do you plan to be popping up shop? And they indicate their spaces and it asks about when and how long and all of that stuff. So that's what's been being followed. So I don't want there to be a misconception to the board that people are just showing up and we don't know about it. That has not happened that I can recall in recent months.
It's just that invoicing.
Yeah, we just haven't been invoicing because there hasn't been a clear process in place.
So we could
I
either
think you're-
update that direct seller's permit and include a space for, if you would like to use village property, these are the steps.
Right.
Or we tie it into the reservation system and then gather the required documents, insurance, and things like that would be really helpful.
Because I think we're talking two different things. You need a direct
Exactly.
seller's permit just to do the activity. That
Exactly.
doesn't
Mhm.
give you permission to do it everywhere.
Right.
Right.
I think that's my point, you know, is that, you know, the village property is the village property, just because I believe that just because they have a direct seller's permit doesn't give them, the permission to sell on village property unless the village board gives them that permission.
Correct. But I don't know that that's very clear right now.
And that's why I'm bringing this up is I believe that we need to pass a motion that if the individuals, I'll make a motion that currently that if individuals are going to be wishing to sell on village property, it needs to be brought forth in front of the board and approved by either Public Works or the village board. Which one do you guys want?
I think we need to update the process first.
Yeah, we still are in the same boat.
I think everybody's saying the same thing. It's just a matter of how are we gonna get to that?
Including location and all that.
Yeah, so if we can, I think, Donnie, if we can update, get this ready for the website, but where
Right, but
people
currently, but
book it.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but currently, I think Tasia's in, under the understanding that if they get a direct seller's permit, they can sell on village property and I'm not saying that was wrong, that with her interpretation, I'm just trying to clarify that I don't believe that's what this board is saying until we get a process in place.
Is that your understanding that they could sell on village
Yep.
property if they have a? Okay, yeah, I don't think that. How about this, Tasia, if you can send out the ordinances to all the board members, the way they stand now. And then, instead of reinventing the wheel, let's check to see what Hudson, North Hudson, Richmond's doing for how their reservations are working and what they're charging for those, so we're not just starting from scratch, we're starting from experience.
Yeah.
Does that work for you, Donnie? Does that work for everybody?
I guess I didn't hear, are we saying that, that use of village property is going to continue with the issuance of a direct seller's permit?
I think for now, and it's the end of the season. I think as long as we can look to see, get some model policy on what everybody else is doing, how much they're charging, get the right language in place and moving
Isn't it
forward.
going to conflict a little bit with what we currently are practicing with some of the people that are currently leasing spots on the property?
I think that changes the lease agreements at all.
I think only one person's leasing and that's on the agenda for,
It's taken care of.
well, it's still sitting there.
Yeah, until through the end of the month.
Okay.
When we're done.
But, Donnie, I don't know that we're in a huge time crunch with that, because I don't think it's getting overly abused and we can set up the proper procedures moving forward.
That's fine. I just want to make sure that it's brought up and discussed, you know, out in front, because I think it's important, you know, that, you know, we've done a lot with allowing people to come in and utilize the space, and it's good for the residents and everything. And I think it's also something that people need to understand is that the village is getting basically zero revenue for it, you know, and it's a good benefit to the residents for having food trucks downtown. And it'd be nice if we could have something like that
continue, and just have a process in place that would be, you know, keeping people competitive because, you know, it's going to happen, you know, it's whether, you know, a lot of the cities, they have, the food trucks line up right alongside the street and sell to people right on the side of the street, and there's nothing wrong with that. So, you know, it's no different than that, but we got a lot we can put them in, you see, so.
And I would probably take it one step farther of other places that I go to and when you wanna rent out a wrestling room or whatever, that's part of it. You wanna rent out a ball field, you rent it out. So there's some revenue coming back into the village that I think we should probably look at.
So do we want to
Agreed.
look at, we'll see that finance?
I think, does anybody have any problem going to, for parks and public works for it to go back to? Cause that's. So we can take it. You'll take it for parks and public works, Donnie? Does that work for you guys?
Have no problem taking a look at it and coming up with a plan. I think, the seller's permit though needs to be visited by finance.
Yeah, that extra box. I think that's a good idea, that extra check mark on there.
So Tasia will send out the current ordinance, how they read. We can work on what we think the updates are. We'll get it. Once we get it kind of dialed in, we'll get it to Paul for his review. And then we can look at model policy from, and Tasia, if you can get a few of them, maybe Osceola, Hudson, North Hudson, Richmond. On what they're charging for use of village or city property.
And maybe the cost of plug-in.
Yep.
Does that work?
Mhm.
Bob, do you have anything to add to that? That work?
I know it's not public comment time, but can I ask something?
Sure.
Just
I'm
one
just-
time, but
I'm sorry. I'm just wondering what kind of liability the village has having those people on your property on that corner. Do they come with their own, I forget what it's called, but like up at the association here, if someone comes and does work for us, we make sure they have an insurance that covers if they were to get hurt on the property here, so they can't come after the
So-
association.
it's a little.
Thanks for your comment on that, Brenda. I think, with the seller's permit, they are required to provide certificate of insurance, correct, Tasia?
I would have to check, I don't recall. I think I mentioned it last month's meeting. I think there's some room for improvement on our direct sellers process in general. I don't know what is all required for that off the top of my head. I would have to
I think
look.
they are supposed to have insurance.
Yeah, that sounds familiar, but I don't know for sure.
Right.
If it's food, I think they have to put the village as a named insured. The village also has like exclusions for. Some exclusions for that, to cover. People
But I
on
think,
village.
I think it's good to be very, you know, having a policy like this, because if an individual does show up and decide they're going to grab a sandwich from, you know, Smoking Joe's, you know, meat shack, that's sitting on the corner over there, they should have something displayed from the village showing them that they're able to, you know, sell in the village, and that they have provided their certificate of insurance and such to the village.
Agreed. I think we're all on the same page and let's, Tasia can get us the information and then it'll go to Parks and Public Works and then to Finance and then to the full village board and we can make it a approval moving forward.
Thank you.
Discussion, possible approval, impact fee needs assessment.
Yeah, so, we're not looking for sort of a approval this evening, at the Public Works meeting. We spent quite a bit of time talking about the water and the transportation sections.
Thank you, ladies.
The other three sections are a work in progress. Then we're getting some information from the other entities involved, the library, and the police and fire, those. So after reviewing the water The Public Works Committee asked for some revisions, and we made those revisions. If you're interested, I could present those costs to you, or I guess I'll share my screen again, if that's okay.
Yep, I'll let you share.
You have Donnie on your
Yeah,
screen?
no doubt.
Let's see, where am I? Oh, that's not right. So earlier we discussed about that water system evaluations. And what we did with the needs assessment is we looked at, your population projections in accordance with your comprehensive plan, looked at your existing population, and, what we determined, and also where the future development is gonna occur. And so, in alignment with your previous needs assessment, water main oversizing, those needs are still included in this updated assessment, right? So the developer is required, for instance, to pay for the 8-inch water main, kind of the smallest. And then any oversizing is paid through the impact fees, okay? And with all the projected developments and everything else, we've identified 18,000, roughly 18,000 linear feet of water main oversizing that's needed. And so as those areas develop, that oversizing comes to the tune of $790,000. So you see that number there. The booster station and PRVEP, I didn't necessarily include that into the impact fee, and I was just assuming that was gonna be paid outside of the impact fee, but after discussion with Public Works, they suggested that we put it in there. You can see it's 19% of that overall dollar amount, and the reason it's 19% is that we looked at the existing number of residential equivalent units, right? So a house is one REU, a business is more likely, some multiplier of one house. And we looked at the amount of existing customers and the projected new ones, and the split there is 81% existing, 19% future. And so that's why you could see collecting 360,000 on those new users. And similarly, for the new water tower down the road, that's another 665,000. You currently have in your war chest there, $264,000. And so when you add this up, you're looking at collecting $1.5 million in needs. And based on the projected number of future REUs, it works out to be $1,690, okay, per REU. And then as businesses come in, depending on their meter size, is how you determine the amount of the needs collected. It's all based on the size of the water main. And that's just determined by Public Works. Just for a little bit of comparison here. Currently, you're collecting $1,082, okay, per house. City of New Richmond was $1,312, is $1,312. Hudson's just under 1,000. Osceola's close to 600. River Falls is the high one at $2,454 per connection in the Village of Baldwin. If, I originally had the PRV, that portion of it outside of this, and, that lowered the amount of the impact fee down to $1,300. The consensus of the board was they wanted that number at least looked at and determined what that was, and that's why it's currently at that recommended $1,690.
For the impact fee,
Yes.
currently $1,760.
Now, that's just the water portion.
That's just a description, okay? So is there any question on the water portion there? Is that,
So thanks for going back in and that was good.
so, you know, again, we were directed to make some revisions and we're gonna bring that back to Public Works next month. And then it'll come presumably to the board for approval at that point. So this is just information only at this point, or, you know, your comments.
Chuck, I have just a question on, where are you guys getting your population projections from? How are you calculating those?
Well, I've taken those out of the comprehensive plan. And a lot of that's coming from the state demographer. Okay,
So I remember about 25 years ago, before you guys were the engineers here, they took the statewide percentage growth of 6%, and St. Croix County and Somerset grew like 20%. And we undersized our brand new water treatment plant before it was even put online. Because we went to a state average instead of what actually St. Croix County is growing. So I just want to make sure that we're not doing like a state average and everybody knows how much St. Croix County is growing, that we
Certainly.
don't undersize things.
certainly. And then, you know, there's if you dig into the details of the document, you'll get more information. It's a state demographer, it's for, you know, it's for the city, the village, excuse me. And, you know, they take those all into account, and I think it's important just because your comprehensive plan was just updated. You know, and, you know, the planners went through an exhaustive review there. And that's, you know, I wanted to make sure I matched that because of the effort they put in to that. A lot of communities, you know, they don't wait 10, 12 years to update these things. You know, what I would suggest is you take a look at it every couple of years. Say, okay, are we tracking like we should be? Are we growing quite a bit faster or slower? Because, you know, who knows what changes? You know, we could be in World War III in a year, you know, who knows? You know, it's just one of those things. It's just,
Chuck, how often do we update our comprehensive plan?
every 10 years.
We should be in the middle of that, looking at it at every 5 at least.
I would think, you know, if you just dust it off every couple of years and say, yeah, looks like we're kind of tracking, you know, if we're looking at 970, how many was it? It was something like 971 RUs. You know, see how we do next year. Did we add 10? Did we add 100? You know, do we have 600, whatever? And then you can kind of based on that say, you know what, we might want to revisit this because
Will we have to redo our comp plan at that point in time? Because you said it's attached kind of to the comp plan.
No, I think, you know, that's more of a question it's a good question, Donnie. It's more of a question for the planners, but I mean, if something goes really off the rails and you're seeing, you know, crazy growth or something, you probably will want to update your comprehensive plan.
Sure.
Usually you recommend just reviewing it every 5 years and doing a full blown amendment change every 10.
Yeah.
But you're growing at a pretty fast rate, you will be here.
And, you know, you've done that in the past too. Yes, your official update every decade, but, you know, you've updated your future land use map in 2018 when it was warranted. That was kind of at that 5-year mark that.
So that's kind of what I was getting to is if we have to amend our comp plan, we should be looking at our needs assessment as well.
Yeah.
So when this came to Public Works, I know it had everything in it. Does every committee need to approve each section, like the police section? Does that?
Yeah, Joel provides some input, library provides input, like what projects they're anticipating, so.
But it just comes through Public Works as part of,
Well,
Well,
come to the board.
yeah,
but it works
those other ones will go through those other
committees.
committees,
Okay.
because Public Works is really the one, you know, interested, shall we say, in the water and the transportation.
Yeah, okay, just want to make sure that.
Chuck, can you scroll down a little bit? I just have a question going right to there, up where it says like meter sizing and everything like that.
Oh, that, okay.
So if we're able to put, because everybody knows we're in desperate need of more industrial park space. And if we're able to get that, say, on the north side of town. How is the pressure going to be and what kind of meter size would we need if we have an industrial park on that side? Is that taken into account? For the pressure and,
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's hard to predict anything and everything that comes in, you know, most of your businesses are, you know, Bob could attest to what, you know, some of the businesses around town are meter size. You know, you can get a lot of water flow through a, you know, 1-inch meter. I'm trying to think about,
Schools are the biggest, really, 4-inch. SMC, I think, has a 2 or 3-inch.
I mean, if you're looking at somebody that needs an 8-inch water meter size, I mean,
Could we account for it if we do have a industry that needs a ton of water?
well, that'll have to be addressed. I mean, if you, you know, if you don't have it, then, you know, you'll have to address that. But I mean, that's, you have, you know, based on the projected number of RUs, you know, that's what the water system evaluation is, you're fine. And, you know, they looked at that, you know, with the water pressure things, but
So if you have a processing plant, let's say Lakeside Foods and Richmond has their own reservoir to address
Their needs.
their water need.
That was all my questions.
oh, shoot. I don't know, I gotta talk fast, huh? All right, transportation, kind of the same thought process. We, you know, we looked at various improvements through town, at some intersection improvements. And we determined that, you know, based the impact fee, you need to collect $814,000. And, you know, we're recommending that 50% of that come from the future residents, and the other portion comes from industrial, commercial, and then institutionals. And again, we relied on, you know, some projections there based on, you know, the comprehensive plan, you know, to develop these numbers. And, you know, what that means for a resident, well, once this is approved, is $993 per RU. Businesses, industrial, commercial, and institutional are handled a different way. It's a trip generation number. So based on the number of trips, and you have these, you have this Institute of Transportation Engineers Trip Generation Manual that uses as a guide. So they'll say for whatever, a restaurant with this many seats will generate this amount of trips a day. You calculate it out. That's been a problem in the past, in that, you know, there's been, you know, that it doesn't that trip generation manual doesn't necessarily always align perfectly with every business coming into town. I believe Andrea mentioned like a you know, cabinet maker in town that, you know, had 2 people and didn't do any commercial, were, you know, being charged $50,000 if you were to base it on the trip generations that the book says, and that's not realistic or practical. And so we have added some language in here that, you know, gives that gives your engineer, you know,
Road use.
so, you know, so there is some language now in this study that basically says, you know, that it'll be based on trips or it's recommended by your engineer. So there's some amount of modifying that can go on if necessary, because you want it to be, you know, aligned with what's reality. Don't necessarily want it.
In that vein, I guess I have a question. Because you make a recommendation on something and say that individual or that industry decides that they are not in agreement with your recommendation, does it default back to the original trip amount, or is there an appeal process or something? I mean, right now if we approve it, it's X amount of dollars for impact fee, and I didn't think that was really you know, something able to be challenged, I guess.
Well, I mean, it's ultimately can come to the board if they want to make that decision, you know, appeal to the board.
If it's a large employer, Donnie, of some sort, like say an SMC that's coming to town, they're gonna bargain with us in multiple ways. Not just this.
And did we already go through that with like Quick Trip Bob and a couple other ones that were? Yeah, so it's already been,
Right, Caleb, though, I get what you're saying, but, you know, like if we got an individual, company that's coming in with an 8-inch water main, and are you saying that they're gonna wanna haggle over, you know, their 80 units and their what is it, $15,000 or $130,000 worth of water, you know, cost on the impact fee?
Well, yeah, I mean, if anybody's coming to us with an 8-inch water main, they're gonna have to build their own water treatment facility. That's gigantic, you know.
Well, the 8-inch is 80 REUs. That's only 10% of our total, you know, for that cost. So I hear what you're saying. Don't get me wrong, but I just was asking that question.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be a board conversation regardless, because they're gonna be in a development deal and all sorts of things, and
It's gonna be part of your package.
it'll get worked in, you know, if we're gonna give them tax credit or all kinds of stuff's gonna have to get discussed.
You know, I see this more as a tool for you guys to, you know, help assist us at that effort.
It gives us a bargaining chip.
Yeah. Place to start.
I think we're all on the same page, just, if we are gonna do an industrial park up there, I just wanna make sure we're maybe a little oversized and undersized, going into it.
Then just for comparison purposes, you can see you're at $141 now. You're kind of heavy on the trip generation previously, like on the businesses and that, what have you. So we modified that per discussion with staff, and then, you know, we're in line more with, you know, we're lower than the city of New Richmond now. Hudson doesn't charge it. River Falls, remember, they had a gigantic water, but, you know, they're collecting nothing on transportation, where Osceola was fairly low on their water, but quite a bit higher on the transportation, so.
So, is there like a pot that this gets put into, that, like with the water? Cause I don't see anything in here that says we've collected X amount of dollars so far.
You have, Johnny, that, it's in here. You have, and you have $186,000.
Okay, so that comes, that comes off the $1 million total then? Drops it down to 814?
Yep, that's correct. Yep, the show's over.
You want me to share, Chuck?
Well, I don't know, we might have gotten through this,
But Donnie, just to answer your question, I think per the statute, you're supposed to keep those funds in a segregated interest bearing account. And you have so much time to spend them. You don't spend them, you have to give them back.
Right.
and that's a real challenge, if you over collect and then you gotta track people down to give it back to them, or,
Good luck.
yeah, developers have left town, or, you know, who knows, it's.
So that leads me into my question on this. Has some of those funds been expelled for, these projects in the previous, needs assessment?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, so that 186 is probably net from net after funds have been expelled for previous, projects, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay.
Larger pipe diameters in your developments, some of those things, and it's, you know, you're in a better position, you know, it's not such a concern for you to collect needs and spend them just because you are, you know, anticipated to grow and keep growing here, and so money will come in and be pushed out more regularly than a, you know, more mature.
So we got $900 in, transportation, 1690 in, water,
Correct.
and, you still have library.
Yeah,
Library and what,
Police.
I'm sorry?
library, fire, police,
Roads.
Just those three, library, fire and police?
right, yeah, I have on a planner help there.
Roads, transportation.
Well, yeah,
You can have parks in there.
Yeah.
Parks are in there.
we don't do parks, we don't do water or sanitary.
So the last three are library, fire and police. Is there an estimated, I mean, we were kind of hoping we'd have this thing ready to present here. When will this, be ready for final presentation to the residents and having the meetings and such like that. It just keeps like dragging on, like we're gonna have another meeting to approve the 690 that's kind of in front of the board right now. Along with the impact, for transportation, library, fire and police, any ideas when that's gonna happen? We thought we'd have it done by August.
No, I get it, and you know, that water system evaluation kind of slowed things up. And you know, those are the more challenging ones were the transportation and the water, getting those right. And you know, we do need just a little bit more information. I don't wanna sound like a broken record, but I don't see why this can't be wrapped up next month. You know, it's, my intent is to have a draft final in front of in the various committees next in September. And then for potential approval, you know, if nothing changes at the board in September,
A week before each committee.
a week before each committee. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and
So fire and police, that, is that gonna go to, fire and library probably would go to finance, right?
They probably all would, the other ones. Or finance probably wants to see all of them. I mean, Andrea's gonna have, I'm sure. Wants to weigh in as well, because Andrea's the one.
Police is with, public safety, obviously, they're gonna wanna, have their say in it, and then, so so the library and fire will come to the, finance, and police to public safety, in September?
Yes, that's where, they can,
Well, I'm just waiting for a response back from the library to see if they have projects that they're gonna incorporate into this. So it's there, and then
Has police offered their input already?
the size of the police still trying to be determined here. So that's the other element, so.
Yeah, because we have to figure out the footprint if we're gonna build a new police station. I believe you guys already got the call information, but we
Yes.
need to figure out what we're gonna do with the needs assessment.
I mean,
It complicates things if it's the joint fire, police, emergency services, or if it's one or the other. So it's.
I think we figured out that we can't afford that big thing, so we have to figure out what their future needs are.
so just so you understand, once this is finalized, this is really, it shows what the maximum you could charge for impact fees. You're not required to charge it. Some places don't. And then you also have to go through a process to amend the ordinance, and there's a public hearing, and there's notices that have to go out, so.
Right, there's a 30-day notice, so we'd be looking at possibly getting it done in October at the latest, about adopting the new ordinance in October, after you give 30 days notice and have the hearing.
The approved, the final assessment has to be on file with the clerk, I think 20 days before you have your hearing, and it's a class 1 notice. You can get it done in a month once it's approved.
Are we ready to table that to move on?
Yes.
Yes. Discussion possible approval, TID 5 lift station.
so. We have draft plans done, there's a little bit of work we have to do on site there. What our goal is we presented draft plans to the board or to the Public Works Committee. And we sought their permission to go seek proposals and submit this to the DNR by the end of the month. And the reason we want to do that is there's a September 30th deadline for projects that are getting funding to have final plans submitted to the state, right? And so they get 90 days to review. And so, the hope is we get it in by the end of August. you know, they won't need that whole 90 days, that's what, if we waited, so we were looking for approval to get those plans submitted to the state. You know, around the end of the month, so we're waiting on some final comments from staff. And, you know, do some soils work out there, so we know what we're dealing with, because the more information we can provide the contractors, presumably. And so, you know, it's you know, it sits down there fairly low because they, when they redid the highway, they, you know, they put casing pipes underneath the highway there, and, so that's kind of dictating where the lift station is gonna go. The access drive down to that lift station, you know, it's like a 12% drive, it's gonna be fairly steep, but, you know, these plans are kind of working in conjunction with that multifamily that's currently going on, right? So this, you know, this lift station needs to be bid soon in order to meet that August deadline of next year to get it installed. Cause there's such a lead time needed for controls. Meanwhile, you know, the you know, the water and the, you know, the force main and the sanitary sewer that this is gonna, that's gonna lead to the lift station. And then to pump it back into your collection system, you know, those plan sheets are gonna be incorporated into that multifamily development project.
So just for clarification, is this for TID 5, is this just for growing wings and multifamily, or is this for even the PLURD property?
It's a whole kit and caboodle, so it would be, good question. So it's all a TID 5 and all of that Florida property to the south, you know, that area to the south. So
Right now, we're in a 5-year TID that's non-performing, basically. So it's, to me, it'd be hard to justify spending another couple $1 million to put it across when it could sit there another 5 years and we're not collecting anything in that TID to pay anything back.
the entire lift station isn't being installed at this point. It's designed to be ultimately a triplex facility. You know, it has to be a duplex facility for starters, so we'll put 2 of the 3 pumps in there. And then they're gonna reuse the generator that used to be out at the wastewater plant. You know, that'll work fine for the duplex lift station. But, you know, once you need that 3rd pump, you know, then you're gonna have to look at upgrading that generator and doing something else with it.
And at that point in time, though, that will be, when that 3rd generator and the pumps are needed, that'll be because of the development needs, correct? And so we'll have some income coming into that area.
And the cities has an agreement with the Florids that says that you will have this lift station up and running by August of 2025, and so this is kind of the 11th hour, and short of getting that agreement amended, you know, this needs to happen.
Without anything for sale or any movement in 5 years, it's gonna be a tough one to swallow unless something actually goes there.
Wasn't the whole new
The multifamily and the,
multifamily TID 5?
Yeah, the multifamily is part of the village property, talking about the 160 acres of the third property, it's gonna go underneath the highway. And we spent a few million on it already, and
but you know, it's one of those
We don't
cases.
have the option to not do this, right?
if it's a non-performing TID, it's my understanding the village would have an option to look at,
This would,
Agreement you have with them.
wouldn't this severely damage that new development?
You need the lift station for the multifamily. You also have that agreement. So, you know, that's kind of the drivers there, and then presumably too, once you have, you know, infrastructure in place, you know, it'll be, and maybe Bob, you can weigh in on this, but, you know, it's a chicken or the egg thing, right? And you know, commercial interests, they kind of want to move. And if you have this in place, you know, they don't have to sit around 2 years waiting for you either.
Right, So the plurds, the expense of the south portions, basically just the casing pipes going in underneath that, connected into that lift station. So the concept that we're going with is to build a big enough lift station for future development and basically you graduate it as more demand comes into the system. Similarly, like Shea Street. We had two pumps. We kept developing and there was a need for a regional one, which we had to abandon that one and then build entirely new one. So this one's we're adding a pump and a bigger generator to serve that, so.
But that bigger, that last pump though, I guess my question is that last pump wouldn't come online unless we have a development agreement or something in place to utilize that, right? Or are we?
Would not come on until the demand was necessary to put that.
Okay.
pump in. Yeah.
Right.
What was the price tag on this? Was that 750,000?
750,000, yeah, for the lift station. And so these plans of what you're bidding is the work with inside the fence, so to speak. You know, that's, and then as part of that multifamily development would be, you know, that project would bid the sanitary sewer down to the plant as well as the force main up to and across 35 there to get into your existing system. So
Have you been
Yeah.
seeing these increased like water in the inflationary, you know, climbing as far as putting in these kind of lift stations and such over the last year, over your career as well? Or have they kind of been staying stagnant?
No, it's depressing that way too. I mean, it wasn't that many, you know, decade or so ago, it seems like you could build a small, you know, a kind of a standard lift station for $90,000 and
Right.
now they're 600,000.
Just getting more expensive as we go.
I mean, it's, the controls are ridiculous, you know, it's just. It's the way the world is.
So I think I missed it. Where on the site is this going to be?
It's down below near, you know, near the highway.
Okay,
That lowest,
Kind of a low point.
the low point.
okay.
And so you can see by that driveway too, on the, you know, it's a fairly significant, you know,
Yeah, 12% slope you said?
a 12% slope, which is pretty high. You know, and as we go here too, you know, we're working kind of in unison or parallel with the developer's engineer. And there will be a need to design regional ponds. And so at some point here, I'm gonna be bringing forward a task order to do the design for the regional ponds. That would sit down there, kind of near those lift stations as well. Because that's gonna serve all of TID 5, you know, their development, flowing wings and all, you know, this whole area.
Sorry, stormwater?
Yeah, stormwater.
Okay.
And then once you have those stormwater pond size, you know, then maybe you start having those discussions about the feasibility or the future placement of the dog park and that sort of
Great. And trails, maybe?
thing, and trails.
Randy Crowe make a motion to approve TID 5 lift station.
Sir.
For estimate
Plans of, you know, permitting
submitted, yeah,
and submitted to the DNR, yeah.
plan to be submitted.
You say that,
Randy Crowe make a motion to approve TID 5 lift station plan to be submitted to the DNR.
okay, just a second.
Yep.
Caleb with the second, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Donnie, I think you're mute.
Definitely.
I said aye.
Thank you. All right, unfinished business discussion, possible approval, village seal and flags, still nothing on that, unless anybody has anything, we can table that. Discussion, possible approval, update of landowner complaints in River Hills, Aspen Drive drainage. I don't know if it's Bob or Chuck.
I guess I can, sorry, so we received some thoughts from the neighborhood there. But, you know, Bob and I have yet to have been able to discuss it. You know, some of the details of it and, you know, some of those things that, you know, it's a balancing act between, you know, what we can get the developers to do and what improvements and other, some of those things. And I've asked my water
But-
resources weigh in.
I'm
for some of those.
I'm sorry, but I don't know why we're talking about what we can get the developers to do on this. The developers should be out of the picture on this. They had their opportunity to do this. If you're okay with what the landowners are proposing, that's why it was put into MSA's hands. The current engineer, they put forth a proposal that was unacceptable to the landowners. We're trying to get relief to these landowners, Chuck. I don't know if we can get an agreement between the landowners and between MSA to agree, say, yeah, that's what it is. The village board has already approved that it be done. And then it would come out of the retainage.
Did we or not? Did the homeowners receive 3 plans, right? That was what was communicated?
We are on the third plan. The first one, my understanding, when they first came out, and I'm speaking as a homeowner now, so village out of it, but
Freely, please.
I will. The first one, when they came out, I think it was determined that wasn't really going to work in general when it was walked. So then that kind of one was tabled outside of us as homeowners. And then the second one was when they proposed adding berms to all of our yards, which none of us were in favor of, and I don't think anyone would be in favor of that solution. So this now is the third plan that has been proposed, but I would say we only rejected one as homeowners.
So the third one
Plan
is,
is okay.
Yes.
you're talking, oh,
Yeah.
So do we care what the developers say as long as we get the homeowners taken care of and there's money in the fund to do so?
so we're happy with the third plan.
Because we should have had this done months ago.
Well, we've been trying to develop a plan that's acceptable to the neighborhood.
And that works, and that there's some reassurance that it was going to work before, you know. We didn't want to go in there and do, yeah, go ahead and do this, and it doesn't work, and we just got done restoring everything. There's still a problem. I think that's the biggest concern right now, is it's hard for them, it's hard for me. It's hard for everybody to visualize, okay, is this going to be acceptable? Unless you're a stormwater engineer and really understanding contour lines and, you know, where water's gonna convey on the surface. So that's been quite the feat that we've been trying to work through, is providing the reassurance. And, you know, that's why we're bringing a team that knows a lot more about stormwater than I do. And that was why I pushed to go to MSA's resource engineer, because I simply wasn't satisfied with what Carlson McSkeen was coming back with. It really, they came back with a second proposal, didn't change anything to hardly any extent. It was still this, you know, court wall. Of course, water's not gonna get in the rear yard, but it's now going to mound up Tasia and the other property back in rear yard. So there, you know, it's a roller coaster back there essentially. So ultimately what we're trying to do is just make the changes once and get the homeowners on board. You know, because if one homeowner says absolutely not, it forces us to go in a different area to look at another solution. So it's like, well, let's just rip up the whole backyard, so you're not touching my yard. That alters the ability to do what, you know, really what.
But at this point, correct me if I'm wrong, it doesn't really matter to us what the developers wanna do, because they were the ones that messed it up in the first place. We're trying to fix it
Yep.
with MSA and the homeowners.
Right, well, being respectful for irrigation and fences and sod and
Right.
established stuff. It's trying to rectify something with the less amount of disturbance possible.
Yeah.
How soon can we get this done?
Well, we just received a couple days ago, the thoughts of the homeowners. And again, we don't wanna do this twice, right? And we are trying to work around fencing and existing conditions and parcels that, you know, forbid us from, you know, entering, you know, encroaching on their property and everything else, you know, that the neighborhood's looking for a guarantee, but it's hard to guarantee. You know, we wanted them to identify what you want guarantees on, because, you know, there's all sorts of just various storm sizes and, you know, ground conditions when you have frozen ground or snow built up, and,
So,
you know, there's always gonna be times where water temporarily ponds. And, you know, it's just a matter of trying to figure out, you know, what we don't want to happen is go in there, all these improvements are made, and no one's happy, and, you know, get back in there. So now that we have their thoughts, we can react to them.
So is this something that we can do? We don't need an official decision on. You guys can just act on this. We don't have to approve anything at the next village board meeting, or do we need to have a special session?
No, that's already been approved. This board took action back in May to have this approved, and that the money be taken out of the retainage to get this issue rectified. And now we're into, looking at August, you know, going into September. And, you know, obviously they got through the summer, but, it really needs to be resolved. And Chuck, is this something that we can start? I mean, we were told we were gonna be breaking ground, and I know things happen, and now we're hopefully, are you hopeful that we can have progress on this thing next month?
Yeah, as long as the contractor is available, yeah. I mean, it's one of those things where, you know, we've been, you know, it's not being ignored. It's one of those things where, you know, the developer's engineer developed a plan, you know, then we had to arrange meetings to go out there and review it with the residents. You know, that wasn't acceptable. I mean, it's a back and forth process, and we're getting close now, because we've looked at it to death, and, you know, we've determined, from my perspective and my water resources engineer's perspective, and I believe the residents' perspective of a, you know, the most acceptable plan. And now it's just, you know.
Where the residents are now is, and I included in your packet, like, when Chuck's talking about our thoughts, we just, as residents, we don't want, because the prior plan with all the berms, it was this big expansive plan that we did not approve, which is our prerogative. But now this one is way less invasive, which is great, but we just want some sort of guarantee. And I know that's a vague term, but that this will be implemented and then we won't have water problems. So like, what if we have water problems? We as residents did not cause this problem, so it should not fall on us to fix. So that's what we're looking for right now is, okay, great, thank you for doing this. But what if it doesn't work? Where do we go from there? So that's where we're at as residents. We're not holding up anything else at this point, other than we just want some sort of, we have expected outcomes. There's not gonna be standing water in our yards. We're not gonna have a river, you know.
Right, but in that vein though, I know what you're saying. If we can do the best that we can possibly do, and I mean, nobody can control Mother Nature. And if we get 2 inches of rain, there's gonna be water standing in everybody's, you know, so, I mean, the expectation is to get the water out so you guys have a yard. And I think if you guys are acceptable to that, that we can move forward with that. That's all, you know, it has been engineered, and, you know, I heard what you're saying, and I get your frustrations on that stuff, and I feel that. I'm just hoping that don't set your expectations high that you're, you know, I mean, we want to get the water out so you got your yards back. And if MSA's got a plan and you guys are acceptable to it, maybe we can get moving forward.
I mean, ground shift, things move. I mean, there's things beyond the control. You know, the one guarantee is it'll be improved.
What happens, Chuck, if 2 neighbors over here say, yeah, I'm fine with the new plan, the middle neighbor says, you're not touching my yard, and then the other one's fine?
That's what we're dealing with.
Right, but how?
Sounds like they're all in agreement.
Yes.
That's what we're dealing with. So we're just doing the best we can with those constraints.
The 3 of us that are most impacted right now are all in agreement. And we just, we're all very reasonable that there's going to be water at some point because we have a water drainage way through our yards. But right now we have a free water feature that none of us signed up for. And we've been very patient, and I don't think that we're asking for too much of, hey, after it rains, a normal rain, which I know is vague, but like, everyone can be reasonable with normal. Normal rain, the water is out within an hour. We don't have standing water. And then within 12 hours, I can go walk through my yard without my feet being wet. I don't think that's unreasonable of a normal rain. Torrential rain,
We
great.
can't do just a drain tile.
Well, again,
whole thing.
with that, you know, if it was, you know, part of the problem stems with they had approved grading plan and those sorts of things, and then when the builders came in and, you know, they didn't always comply with that approved plan, there's provisions in place now to help assure that doesn't happen in the future. But, you know, that's some of the problems where you say you have an upstream, you know, lot that was supposed to be swaled on both sides of the house, so the water hits their lot and goes between them and their neighbor's house. It wasn't graded that way and landscaped that way, and so now that water goes the way it wasn't intended. And, you know, and there's no ability at this point for that upstream home, for you to tell that upstream homeowner to rip out his whole yard and redo it.
You can
And
see
they,
with the
and
naked
they
eye
don't,
that
they don't
it's not
want
gonna
to.
Work, it comes down and then comes up and then down again.
So it's a mess. I mean, that's a short answer. And so that's why we've been trying to look at the constraints. How can we improve this, you know, the ultimate beehive catch basin that it's all going to, we're gonna lower that so you can get, you know, a more positive slope. And use that kind of existing swale as it was designed, improve upon that, you know, add some, you know, like golf course, you know, catch basin type of structures and those sorts of things, and, you know, improve.
Extra taxes for lakefront property.
None of us wanted it. My thing from a homeowner standpoint is that this, I don't know where the breakdown happened and we can't go back and redo it at this point. But I don't think that it's an acceptable stance for the village to take, speaking as a homeowner. For the village to take up, well, let's just do it as good as we can. When this isn't our problem as homeowners to begin with. I don't know where the ball got dropped. But it wasn't our ball that was dropped. So why should we have to deal with a good enough solution? None of you would want that in your yards. None of you would want that in your yards. It should not be that we should just accept good enough. It just shouldn't. So,
It's the best we can come up with the constraints that we have.
but you could rip up the whole thing, Chuck. You could take out all the yards. When we brought this to the village 2 years ago, we were the only yard with a fence and the only yard with sod. And if it all has to be ripped up and redone, so be it.
And the other homeowners you think are gonna be okay with that?
Us three are fine, and I believe that the people upstream from us, north, if they were guaranteed that it was gonna be restored, that their fence was gonna be put back in,
Sod.
their sod and everything, and it would solve this problem, that they would be on board.
And that's probably gonna be cost more than what's sitting in that fund that's available, so then do we have recourse to go after the developer to pay the difference?
You know, that's gonna go back to what those grading plans were approved.
Have you seen the pictures?
Oh, I've seen it, yeah.
It's horrible.
You know, there's a big swell that runs down through there, and obviously there's gonna be water running down through it.
It's not water run,
Or pond,
It's a,
there's gonna be water
lake.
back.
it's bad. So can we rip the whole thing out and start over?
Well, I mean, that was what was originally proposed because. And the root of the problem started because we weren't getting surveys on the grading. We were getting the as-built and they were 2-to-1 slope as recommended in building. Construction.
They just had to verify that it sloped away from the house.
Yes, and the middle of the yard, between the yards, we're supposed to go towards the street, those all go in the back, and that's where a lot of it is, you know, we can alleviate a lot of it, but it's ripping up the whole thing.
Yeah,
And
but if that's what we need to do.
I'm
to
totally
make it
fine with
right,
that, but that's, it's impactful. So,
And you can't go on somebody's yard and tear it up if they don't want it tore up.
You know, and water was intended to go between houses, that isn't happening, and it was allowed to happen. And, you know, again, I think this solves problem, improves it, and it gets that water, you know, gets more positive drainage through those yards, so, you know, it should work. But, I mean, I have standing water in my yard, I mean, it happens and it's. you know,
It should work, but if it doesn't work, what's the recourse for the residents?
Well, what does it doesn't work mean? I mean, if you have water temporarily ponding, I mean, and that's gonna happen, but is that,
I think is it acceptable to say, yeah, you're not gonna have water standing in your yard for 12 hours after a less than 2 hour rain? That's acceptable to us, if I'm understanding correct.
Could we put
Let's
that,
drive that
that
it's
bag-ish,
conveyed off the property and shed and went into the storm sewer where it was supposed to go.
can we put an inch and times, an inch of rain and time
On an
amount on it per acre or something, or?
47,000 gallons of water.
It should be vacated by so much time.
well, who's guaranteeing it?
Paul, is there-
If the village is doing the work.
The
Is there,
village will have to guarantee it. I would
is there a contract that could be drawn up for even, was there 4 homeowners, it sounds like?
There's 3 of us that, where our yards will be, we're in the middle, our yard. According to this plan, will not actually be impacted, but our neighbors on the other side will actually have things happening. In their yards.
But it's not just the 3 houses, there's another one that might not be on board, you're saying?
I mean, it goes all the way up Aspen, all the way to the north. The problem is not just our 3 houses, it is all the way up Aspen. That's what I'm saying, like, I'm not an engineer and I will never claim to be, but that's where our concern as residents is that we don't want just a Band-Aid solution for a systemic problem.
For sure.
And the reality is it's gonna improve it by 50%. That's my understanding.
Is it gonna be a perfect solution? Probably not, but it's something. It's better than it is.
So is there some kind of contract we can have with those homeowners that said, we're gonna do this? Spend this money, if this doesn't work, plan B, we'll have to be able to have your permission to do plan B, which would be very invasive and cost a lot of money, but. Do you put together a contract like that?
Well, I'm not sure how you do that and set some sort of standards that are enforceable, and then who's gonna pay for the second fix? Is that gonna come out of the village pockets? No.
The one other thing I will say is, there's a lot of other places in here that in town that have had drainage issues and stuff like that, and we have done nothing for them.
That's correct.
And when these houses, so I will play a little devil's advocate that I do live in that neighborhood, and when I moved into that neighborhood, I looked at Eric Wood's house. Where Eric, Michelle, and Michelle live, and I said, there's gonna be drainage problems here, I can't believe that they're building these houses here, so before I even bought the house, I could see that there was issues. And every time you buy a house. You get what you buy, you sign on the dotted line, it's not, I don't think it's fair, and that's why I have all agreed to change, I have changed. Ordinances, we've changed ordinances, so this doesn't happen to residents. I'm very sympathetic of this, that's why I agree that we do something and come up with these plans to fix them, but. Everyone who entered into that house, entered that agreement and saw the drainage issues when they moved in. I think we've done as much as we could and have been really sympathetic, and I do understand it's being your house and.
That's why you have.
I feel for you,
Developers.
So-
pay costs.
I don't know if there's gonna be a perfect solution here.
And I agree with what you're saying. My only hiccup is that I get frustrated when there's been like admitted errors, meaning it should have been done this way and it wasn't followed to this plan and it wasn't done this right. If it was done completely as it was supposed to, and then that's just how it ended up, then yes, that falls on us, but that is not the case. So that's where I struggle as a homeowner, just accepting, well, someone screwed up, so I just have to deal with it. That to me isn't acceptable.
Do we know exactly like who dropped the ball on this? Was it the developer? Was it the
3 companies that aren't allowed to build anymore.
surveyors?
Well, it was, yeah,
the-
because we weren't getting, we were not getting surveys to verify an occupancy, and then the ordinance got changed. Well, those houses were already established. Some of the problem already existed,
Who does the surveys?
the builder
The builder does the survey.
submits it to.
They
So
pay-
not the developer, the builder does the survey. And so it's on the builder or the developer, because it's their
Well,
development.
then this other piece
Is the
is, this is
grading-
developer, we have a developer's agreement, we have not signed off on final completion, so they're still in. Their warranty period hasn't started yet. It hasn't, we have not signed off on any of it, and that includes the drainage. So when I have the conversation with the developer, and he says, how's this my problem? Well, you pick these builders that come in here, you have a say,
The developer,
so it's on you.
and
Yeah,
then
there's
how
4
much
builders.
is sitting in that fund roughly?
I have.
Enough to fix everything from start to finish?
If not, we bill them and we see what happens.
We need to make this right for these people.
Absolutely.
Sooner than later, and I feel like it's the end of August and this came up, what was it, last year, and then again in the spring, and then now here we are at the end of summer.
Board, 3 years working on this.
Yeah, we brought it as, for us specifically, we moved in September of 22. And I contacted the village probably that started that October. Well, then winter hit, so again, we're reasonable. But then followed up in the spring, so we went through all last summer without anything, and now all of this summer has been, you know, we've made more progress, but we're approaching 2 years.
And that was, going to the developer and said, hey, Brian and whoever from Preferred. Hey, you gotta take care of this problem. Oh, yeah, we'll take care of it. 2 weeks goes by, it's, hey, oh, yeah, we're on it. 2 weeks goes by, yeah, we're on it. And they do a little
We
bit.
just have to take them out of the mix and
Absolutely, and that's what we gave them, October 31st, make the, then we're taking over the contract, same thing we had to do out in Mindset. So, yeah,
and then
it's.
probably no more. Building permits.
They have a mandate for one.
Yeah, they did, they had
Preferred properties.
might have saw one from them and one from HRHH on the last impact fee. Last month.
So, and I guess, so it's our recommendation to proceed with the recommendation as currently contemplated and improve the situation
And then see where it goes.
see where it goes.
I think having reasonable expectations for them, to present to the homeowners so that they understand what, the engineering plan will be, then they can determine whether or not they're willing to accept that or not. I'm not saying they have to agree to something like that, but, at that point in time, it's like, well, what is the next thing? If we have to rip it all up and go that route, then that's gonna have to be costed out and planned and put forth the proper way. And like you said, if you're gonna do it right. If that's the homeowners are saying that's what they want to get done, and we have a developer's agreement that hasn't been adhered to, then we need to enforce the developer's agreement. Bottom line.
I think that's what you're trying to do. Is take the money that's sitting there and come up with a fix. And it probably looks different than what's in that original approved plan.
Then I would also say maybe the village should do a letter to the developer saying, this is what we're forced to do since you guys haven't taken care of this. And any other, you guys could possibly be on the hook for anything extra that's not in that rainy day fund. So they know it going into it. That makes sense?
Yeah, and the biggest thing is you need to get the homeowners on board.
Yes.
Because if they're not, I said, you just can't go in and start tearing up their land.
Tasia, can you help to,
Well, so we are on board, like, this is just. The last time we met with MSA, they asked, cause we said, can we have some sort of guarantee? And then MSA and Bob asked us as homeowners, well, what does that look like to you? So this is what we have come back with. So that, the three of us that are here on this document that I shared with you, we are in agreement with the plan as it was presented to us, the last time we met. If these things can be agreed upon, just so we have some sort of something as homeowners, guarantee some outcome expectations, some whatever. Then we are on board to sign off with the plan as homeowners.
And MSA hasn't had a chance to review those expectations that you have to determine whether or not that plan will meet those expectations?
Got this Saturday, I presume you probably got it on Monday.
Okay.
So that's.
And again, we're not in a position, I mean, we're not in a position to guarantee anything. I mean, it's ultimately the village that'll be guaranteeing if you extend any sort of guarantee.
the village isn't sending out the public works guys to do the grading and take care of this, would that be through MSA or through the village or?
Well, the village will be contracting with the contractor.
Based off of your plans?
Yeah.
And how soon, Bob, can you get a contractor lined up to start?
Hopefully quick.
They're pretty tough to get.
It's been a year.
But it's
Albrightson's my preferred and he's been very committal to being in White Sap and he said, yep, let me know. So I would say he's gonna give me it's not gonna require a lot of equipment. So that's the good part. It's not gonna require a big pipe crew. That's a good part. So
Have you checked with our neighbor here, Shipsky, Carson Shipsky?
no, the only reason I'd like to defer to Albrightson is because they're original excavator out there, so he has knowledge of all of this. Like, oh, this isn't the way this is supposed to be done.
Yeah, they do good work out there too.
So that's my only reason is I don't wanna go back 10 steps and do this and having someone not really understanding what we're trying to accomplish. That's my only
A
reason.
double-edged sword though, they were the original ones.
They didn't create the problem though. The builders created the problems.
and presumably, Bob, you'd have a time and materials type of contract with them, right?
Yes.
So there's no guarantee, they're just gonna do what they're told and.
So I have one question, a couple of them. So for the compensation portion of this, you want one outdoor, everyone wants an outdoor meter installed and then,
No, there are
Free.
outdoor meters, so just because there'd be sod restoration costs and, my understanding from the plan, Bob said, it was at my yard. 328 is not gonna be touched, so that doesn't apply to us. None of this really does. But our neighbors on either end have outdoor meters and they already have sod in, so they're asking for. The cost of the water, because they'll have to restore the sod that is put back in when they've already established sod one time. For the cost, so that's my understanding of that ask for them.
It'd be all for that up to a certain water dollar amount. And then
Yeah,
the other
you're
one-
gonna have to put guardrails on all of this because you won't find a contractor anywhere that'll agree to this.
And we're not experts, so that's where we would defer to. Whoever could put it in language that makes sense.
and then 10%
Real
of
estate's
property
bad.
taxes, we can't give property taxes back, that's not like a thing.
No, that's against the statute.
And do we know how high the water table is there, or is it, I mean, you put in sand, you put enough drainage?
It's just
It's probably.
you just need
bad
positive,
material.
you need positive,
There's a drain being added that will be piped underground between, two houses over from Burgers. It'll go into a catch basin onto Aspen. And the rest is graded out to go into an additional ground drain that needs to be dropped down. because it's too high right now, so water is collecting over and around that, so that invert needs to be dropped. So it gets in there quicker to alleviate any backing up of water, because that's what it's doing right now. And
I think we spent enough time, but can you guys make this a priority?
Well, I
it
guess,
has been a
I guess
priority.
I'm looking,
And we haven't been doing nothing.
No, I'm not saying
That's-
that, I just,
that's-
I feel bad for these guys.
I do
as well,
too.
and
I've been on the phone and I've been trying to do my best and it's a shitty situation. Something that really frustrates me because there was things in this that I fought for and I said, well, okay. And if you're telling me we're not gonna have problems, and then
And then you have problems.
And
and
they-
it's-
I'm dealing with
you are.
it, and that's why in Pineville, I'm like, absolutely not pulling back on that, so you are putting in additional structures. Too bad.
you know,
And then,
if, I'm sorry, to interrupt. But if the residents want certain assurances or something in writing or, you know, other than, you know, we'll approve the situation. I don't know if it's gonna get done this year. Because that's gonna take some time to review and react to, and it's ultimately the board that's gonna have to say what they're willing to do, you know, I can't say, yeah, don't worry about the cost of the water, you know, those sorts of things, I just can't do that, but if we can get some direction to just go ahead and improve it, we can get something we can get it accomplished this fall, otherwise,
What
I
I-
fear that we won't be able to.
What I can do is get a hold of Alberts and get them on the schedule, while in the meantime, we can review this. And if there's a comment we need to bring back to the homeowners, we can bring back something and we're not delaying anything, we can do it concurrently. And then we're not in a delay, and then we can get it done, we're gonna get it done.
Because if there's a need for a special call meeting or something like that, we're all up to speed on what needs to be done here. If it's something that absolutely has to come to us, I'm perfectly fine with, you know, waiving any kind of fees to review this, to get it approved and move forward.
I would support a special meeting as well for you too.
for, is everybody okay with having Paul draft up a letter to the developer to say, this is where we're at, this is where the possibility of,
We've probably done that already, haven't we?
if it goes over this amount, we are gonna hold you responsible for this. I mean, does anybody have a problem with that?
We already done that. That's how we got here to the point where we keep it already.
We haven't done anything, so, but I'm saying not just keep the money, but if it goes over that amount, that we're gonna hold them liable, and we just know that in a letter to sue him. If it goes over, it helps when you get to court.
We're gonna end up there.
So I say send the letter of the,
I'll assure you that. That's the first word that comes out of this mouth.
Oh, even I've heard it when it's not good.
Is it needed, Paul?
Well, you can send a letter. You know, for what it's worth, you can send the letter.
this helps later on in the report when you have some documentation.
Put some on notice.
I'll make a motion to send a letter. I don't know if it's on the agenda that we can make a motion on that, but I'd make a motion or yeah, Paul, do you just send a letter out to him?
For a second,
I'll second.
further discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Convene to close session, move into closed session pursuant to Wistats
I
19.
don't think we need this. Or they've paid in full and they've given notice that they're gonna leave the end of the month. So-
Correct.
All right, well then.
Motion to adjourn.
Hold on a second. Point of order. I didn't hear that, Paul. There was multiple people talking there.
As of today, they've paid in full all their rent. And they've also given notice that they're gonna terminate their agreement as of the end of the month and move the trailer.
Isn't the agreement, supposed to provide a certain amount of time on that, or are we waiving that?
Raising it.
It's 21 days, but I wouldn't fight over it. Nope.
Move to- Okay, that's all I had a question of.
And then Caleb made a motion to adjourn.
Brandon Crowe, second.
Brandon Crone with the second, further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed. Meeting is adjourned at 8:14 PM. Thank you, guys.